First, we'll talk about how this team even survived against enemies billions of levels higher for multiple turns to accomplish what you've seen. The game has 3 main types of damage. Attack damage, which is from normal attacks, spell damage, which is from spells, and indirect damage, which is damage neither from attacks or spells. Examples would be realm instabilities, reflected damage, or status damage. The team first deal with indirect damage by making use of the artifact trait, Master of Phase Warriors, which when the entire team only consists of Phase Warriors, they are immune to indirect damage. The trait Outcast No Longer changes the race of 3 creatures at the start of battle, and the perk We Are Pack takes care of the rest. For damages from attacks, the team used Aeolian as it allows allies to always dodge attacks. However, since dodging can sometimes trigger unwanted enemy effects, we pair it with Elf Mystic to mitigate those retaliations. Another solution would be to take the perk Rigor, that allow allies to ignore most crowd-controlled debuffs, which are the primary danger. In this team, the latter was chosen. For spell damages, the team made use of the Weapons Dealer. This creature will give all enemies its artifact trait when its turn comes. In this case, the trait makes all enemies unable to cast spells, manually or not. Fuse it with a Mimic will guarantee it goes first in most cases. In the event Mimic cannot function properly, Nyx's Informer will be the safety net. This defense strategy is not perfect, but works for the majority of times. This team's idea of gaining stats is by focusing on only maximum health, and then let the Singularity trait takes care of other stats. This is also why healing is important, as all of those other stats will depend on current health and not maximum health. Because this team can only gain health by resurrecting, the first turn was spent for each ally to cast the spell Vacuum on the Aspen and to gain its innate trait, and a creature can only resurrect from death 10 times per battle. Spells that specifically triggers on resurrect effects were used to bypass that limit. The spell Revelation were used for the first couple of turns to wait for the perk Mental Clarity's activation. Then, it was switched to the ultimate spell, Afterlife. In programming, numbers are stored in a format with a maximum value. For most common systems, it's the 64-bit floating point limit at about 1.8 E308. The team reached 3 E310 in current health, which is much higher than the limit. That's why when the game tried to officially process that number, the variable overflowed and was labeled infinity.